In '68, that year was a great deal of change initiated. Blacks began to assert themselves, and that assertion got down into the high schools, and there was a lot of turmoil going on about not only the war but the fact that the blacks weren't being treated fairly. There was an incident in the city schools in which a referee was pushed or hit or something for a team happened to be mostly black kids on the team at Central High School, and that caused a great deal of furor and as a result of that, and I was teaching. I was at Lincoln at the time. Madison had just closed, and the superintendent of schools sent a substitute teacher and asked me to come down to his office. And at that time, he suggested to me or asked me whether or not I had ever thought about being a coach, a basketball coach here in the city of Syracuse. And so that was how I happened to become the first varsity basketball coach in the city of Syracuse. But that team, my first team, we won everything, and as a result of that, I think the superintendent called me down again, and he suggested that maybe I go into administration. And I have my own thoughts about why he thought that, because I say, we laugh and talk about it, that if I could take 11 or 12 young black kids and discipline them enough to be successful there, he said, why not take that, whatever he might have, and send him down to Central. So as a vice principal, I was first administrative intern and then a vice principal that same year, the next year, I was back at the high school from which I had graduated, and it was kind of interesting because a lot of the teachers whom I had were still there. So I was vice principal over some of the teachers that had taught me, a relatively short time ago. Things like this doesn't just happen, I believe. I just think it's just the way things are set up, and I've just been blessed to have these kinds of things happen to me the way that they did happen. And as a coach over the kids there at that time and the teams that I've had, my greatest gratification still comes from, I say kids, the guys aren't kids now, that I see with their families and all that, and even the girls who were in school at that time, because that gave them, because my team was essentially black, so they were boyfriends and girlfriends and whatever, and not only that, but that encouraged the people from the pool halls and the villages, because their nephew, their brother now is playing ball with a black coach, and I think it did something for the black community, because it was 1968. That was a year that we had these kind of, well, I wouldn't call them riots, but uprisings here in the Syracuse, with the cops and getting involved and all of that kind of thing. And because of that, partly because of that, the police chief O'Connor called me, and he made me a civilian police lieutenant in the community relations department. And that caused a problem because they had my picture in the paper as a lieutenant in the police department, and I'm a civilian. And back then, they used to have what they call a happening wagon in the summer, and it was the city parks department they had, and they still have this stage, mobile stage, and they would hire local little bands, and this is in the summer now, and they would be in the park at Thornton Park or Wilson Park, and of course that brought hundreds of youngsters, right, from all parts of the city. And what we were there to do is to kind of monitor, and that's where, for me, my position as a coach, and I knew, even though I had my own kids, but they knew me from Corcoran as a coach, and Henniger, and so a lot of potential difficulties were stopped. When guys get into it from the south, I could go in there and hey man, no, that's Coach Breland, and hopefully I think I've been fair with them, so that they would adhere to what I say. And quite frankly, there were a couple of times when it was really scary, when there was an altercation, and some kids were on Rayner and State Street, and some kids were playing ball up at the Thornton Park, a bunch of guys, and they'd come down into the bricks there, and we're hanging around talking about it, and a couple of the officers said, hey, break it up, and here we live here, and that one thing led to another, and they grabbed the kid and all of that, and they got upset about it, and they started, I guess, broke some windows, and they threw some stuff into the store, and they brought the police down. People don't really remember this, but they brought the police down, and they were literally in the police line on State Street facing the projects, because kids were in the alleyways throwing bricks and stuff out. People don't really, they don't remember that. And I only did because I was with the community relations department. I got a call from Bill, and he said, hey man, you had to get down here. Oh, I was about to break loose. And when I got down there, they were out there, and they were getting ready to throw tear gas. And people that lived there were looking out their window. They didn't know what was going on. And these kids, a lot of kids, they started throwing. And so when I went up to the officer in charge, and he didn't know, who are you? I said, well, I'm, he was all, upset. And the only thing that saved me again, it had to do with my basketball, because a sergeant, Bill, I forget what Bill's name is, but I used to play ball against him, and he was a police sergeant now, and he came up, and we got to talking, and I said, well, don't have them, putting tear gas up in there. They're just kids up in there, and people are looking out their windows and all. They didn't know what was going on. But that was one case where we really diffused a situation that could have really been bad.